Hi, I'm Douglas Mason, President and CEO of Magnum Gold Corp. Inc., MGI on the TSX Venture Exchange. A 2015 drill program on the LH property intersected high-grade gold, including 16.9 meters of 13.58 grams and 11 meters of 20.66 grams per ton gold. A follow-up drill program is planned to further evaluate previously identified subsurface high-grade gold mineralization. Please visit our website at magnumgoldcorp.com.
Welcome to the Goddard Report. Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. Here is Jim Goddard. My guest is Bob Mackin. He's an award-winning investigative reporter and publisher of TheBreaker.News, his website, TheBreaker.ca. Welcome back to the show, Bob.
Thank you.
The NDP government in BC wants to start consulting people on freedom of information changes. Wouldn't it just be easier if they followed the law just the way it is?
Well, follow the law just the way it is and reform the law as they had promised. They had promised, and they had battled themselves over the course of 16 years under BC Liberal rule against the BC Liberals to try to get information to the public. And so they know what us in the media have experienced. They know what the public has experienced. They know how to fix it. They've got enough ideas themselves. They put forward private members' bills that the BC Liberals voted against, private members' bills that called for things like duty to document, that there is no law that actually requires government to write down decision-making processes. And there is no law also that requires them to keep those documents. It's really discretionary. And the NDP promised to fix that. The NDP promised to even look at creating a law that set a maximum fine as high as $50,000 for politicians and staff who destroy records without proper authorization. They were going to reform the way BC was governed. They were going to put the problems that were created in the BC Liberals behind us because they were going to fix it. The words of John Horgan was, help was on the way, that they're going to make this a better BC. Things got pretty bad under the BC Liberals with the triple delete scandal that the Information Commissioner investigated in the office of then Transport Minister Todd Stone. There was mass deleting, and the Information Commissioner, Elizabeth Denham, found that this was a problem not only in the Transport Minister's office, but also in other cabinet ministers' offices, and even in the Premier's office, where people were mass deleting their email on a daily basis and also using post-it notes just to keep track of things instead of enter things online. This was all an effort to keep things out of the hands of the public, the media, and the opposition. There were even cases that we found out during the Quick Wins scandal that turned 5 this week, actually. 5 years ago this week, the Quick Wins scandal blew up. We found out through that cabinet ministers were using Gmail email addresses because they thought that was the way of getting around the FOI law. No one would ever find what they had written. But the Information Commissioner, Elizabeth Denham, also did another report that said it doesn't matter where politicians and bureaucrats talk about what the job they're doing for the public that we're paying them to do. It doesn't matter what form they use, as long as they're discussing it in print or by voice, those records are accessible by the public through FOI. So the NDP sat there in opposition. They knew what the problems were. They created ideas for solutions. They heard us in the media, they heard the public, but no, they've gone through 2 throne speeches so far, and they've decided instead of tabling a law as soon as possible, any reforms, they've delayed it. They kicked it down the road. They started this week an online consultation process on information access and privacy. They want to know what the public wants them to do. And this is a real waste of time. I went, as soon as I found out that they'd announced this, I went to the website actually and put some of my thoughts there. That this is a waste of time. That the NDP themselves, back in the last election, April 27, 2017 to be exact, the BC Freedom of Information and Privacy Association got a response from the NDP campaign to their questionnaire. They asked them a series of questions. And I thought, well, why don't I put that online with some of the answers to those questions about what the NDP said when they were in campaign mode and remind them of what they said in campaign mode, the promises they said they'd implement when they became the government. So I put that online, and also put some other thoughts online about this, about the previous reports by the Commissioner of Information and Privacy about how government should actually be doing proactive disclosure. We shouldn't have to file FOI requests to get information out of the government. The government should just publish them. The government's got websites. They got people who are getting paid pretty well. They should just take that information that they create, publish them on a regular basis, so that we don't have to wait 6 weeks, 6 months, or even 6 years to get the information that we have a right to see. So I put that on there, and I got an email from the bureaucrats in the Public Engagement Office of the Government Communications and Public Engagement Department, which is part of the Finance Ministry. They run in a budget of more than $30 million a year. I got an email back saying, no, we're not going to post those because you're a reporter. And you know, it says there in the policies that media is not allowed to post queries to this government website, and so we're not going to put it there. But I wrote back and said, how dare you? I'm a reporter. I'm a citizen of British Columbia. I have a stake in this. As a reporter, as someone in the media, this is our cause. This is what we should be advocating for. As reporters, we should be as straight and narrow down the fence on other issues. But when it comes to information access, information that we have an interest in helping the public see, it's our job to advocate for this. And so I said, you please put those thoughts of mine back on the website, because if you don't, then that's censorship. And I asked if they're also censoring other public comments opportunities on their website, such as consultations about the mining industry, consultation about labor relations. Are they censoring the thoughts of miners who are concerned about the mining industry? Are they censoring thoughts of labor union members who are concerned about labor relations laws? And I challenged them. I said, if you're doing that, and if the same thing to them as you're doing to me, then that's censorship, and your whole department is a sham. Good news is, this morning I got a note from the office, the public engagement people in the government, and they told me that we put that back online. So I'm glad that that's happened, and I think people should go to this website now and follow me. engage.gov.bc.ca/info access. Go there, follow me. If you're in the media, if you're anywhere in British Columbia, if you're worried about the information that you have a right to get, but the government makes it hard for you to get, if you're worried about your privacy, about the government knowing too much about you, this is your chance to tell the NDP to hurry up and stop wasting their time, get on with it, get a law happening. Because this public consultation will end in early April, and this legislative session will end at the end of May. They're going to use this, they're going to dilly-dally on this for the rest of the spring and into the summer, and it may not be till fall next year when we finally get any legislation tabled. And you never know what they could do. They could always strike a committee and drag this out longer. And we may not even get any action on this before we go to an election again, scheduled election, in 2021. And this would be a real shame because, again, the BC NDP sat in opposition, and they saw firsthand what the BC Liberals were doing to the information and privacy laws, how they were breaking those laws, and how they weren't reforming those laws as they had been recommended by so many experts and so many commissioners. And here they are, the NDP, now just dragging their feet. This is not better BC.
We'll have more with Bob Mackin right after the break.
I'm Greg Johnston, CEO of Carl Data Solutions, an industrial Internet of Things company that provides big data solutions for monitoring critical infrastructure. Carl Data offers machine learning and predictive analytics features through our cloud-based applications to deliver key asset-saving operational insights from massive amounts of data. Carl Data trades on the CSE symbol CRL and the pink symbol CDTAF. For more details on Carl Data, please visit carlsolutions.com.
I'm Bill McWilliam, President of Cascadero Copper, CCD on the TSX Venture Exchange. Cesium is one of the world's rarest metals with a growing industrial demand. Drilling is underway on our Tehran property in Argentina to prove up a cesium resource. Cascadero's patent-pending leach process has the potential to make Cascadero the lowest cost supplier of cesium in the world. Visit our website, cascadero.com, or phone us at 604-924-5504.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Bob Mackin. Bob, did anything stand out for you in the BC budget?
Well, they took action on the real estate and housing. That was the big ticket issue. They've been under a lot of pressure because there's so many people in this chaotic, crisis-laden market that are just looking for solutions. Are these the right solutions? We'll see in the months to come. There's people that are complaining that there might be some unintended consequences, people that might own vacation property, for instance, or people that might own property in the city because they live elsewhere but have to work in the city. There's even a case of someone who works at St. Paul's Hospital in healthcare who lives elsewhere but works extended period of time at St. Paul's Hospital, and they're now worried that they're going to be dinged by this new tax. It's the right step forward to finally get a handle on this, but then again, is this too late? I think in many ways it is. This is something that the BC Liberals, I don't think, wanted to do anything with because they wanted the market to sort itself out. But this was a special market, a market that has been receiving just billions of dollars of overseas money, unchecked money, and it came at a time when the resource markets were soft. So in order to keep the economy going, they knew they couldn't do anything to hasten any mine approvals, hasten any LNG plant approvals. Well, the best thing they could do for the economy that they thought at the time was just to sit back and let the real estate profits roll, because a lot of those real estate profits were involving also big money donors to the party. Yet it got to a point a couple of years ago when the public started saying, wait a second here, we're starting to have neighborhoods with empty houses, starting to have neighborhoods with demolitions and construction projects which are taking too long. We're starting to have real estate bidding wars where people walk in with cash and will overpay for real estate. It got to be just too crazy. So this is the NDP who came to power mainly because of voters in the Lower Mainland putting pressure on them to do something, anything, after the BC Liberals did. So the question here is, are the NDP, after the Liberals did basically nothing, doing too much? And that's going to play out in the months to come. One thing that I am watching is a new beneficial ownership registry. They're going to have it that when property changes hands, that the new owner will have to disclose who the owner really is and will be subject to audits. That has been a problem around the world that has been identified in various jurisdictions. United Kingdom is one of them, where they got a flood of Russian money, like we got a flood of Chinese money, and some of that money was not from sources that people would consider to be ethical or legal. And our authorities need to know when and if real estate, as well as companies, are being used as vehicles for crime. So the NDP did take a step forward there. We will have some transparency in the property registry. We'll know who the beneficial owners of properties are. They're supposed to do the same thing for companies. Now, that's going to take longer because they have to deal with the federal government on that and other provinces. We don't know when we'll see the beneficial corporate ownership registry, but that's on its way too. There's been several cases in British Columbia in recent years of white-collar crime, and there's some that are being prosecuted in other jurisdictions involving British Columbia actors. And if we know more about who is owning and running companies in BC, we'd have a better handle on that. Transparency International did a report back in 2016 that said it's actually harder to get a library card than it is to register real estate or to register a company, and that's not right.
We'll have more with Bob Mackin right after this.
Cypress Development Corp's flagship lithium project is located just east of Albemarle's Silver Peak mine in the heart of Clayton Valley, Nevada. A 12-hole exploration drill program for lithium-enriched claystone on Cypress's 100% controlled properties is now underway. Cypress Development Corp trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol CYP, the Pink CYDVF, and on Frankfurt's C1Z1. For more information, please visit our website, cypressdevelopmentcorp.com.
Don't miss out. Stay informed. Receive the HowStreet.com weekly recap with thought-provoking podcasts, radio, and articles delivered to your inbox. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage at HowStreet.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Bob Mackin. Bob, the federal budget said it was going to be a pro-woman budget, but former BC Finance Minister Carol Taylor said until you provide proper child care funding, you're not going to get more women into the workforce. Do you believe that?
I definitely believe that. This was a budget that was not so much geared to making life in Canada easier or more affordable for women. This was the federal Liberals getting closer to the 2019 election, trying to figure out ways and means of appealing to female voters. That's what this is all about. And when you talk about raising taxes, talk about deficits, talk about all sorts of other problems, it's actually going to make it harder for companies to meet laws when it comes to pay equity. It's going to make it harder for companies to actually employ women, employ anyone, if they're burdened under taxes and fees and all those other situations. And so I don't think this budget will get to the goal that it says. The goal that the Liberals really have is marketing to female voters. They've obviously decided that this is Justin Trudeau's way that he can win, because this is a politician who we've seen has been prone to several mistakes, but the company that he keeps, and is under continuing criticism in various parts of Canada. We've had a lot of voters who were conservatives, who didn't like the way the Stephen Harper government was going, so they switched to vote 2015. You had a lot of voters who didn't really want Prime Minister Tom Mulcair of the NDP, so they thought their safer option was Justin Trudeau. Trudeau didn't really win the 2015 election. It's often in Canada that the person that wins the election is not a winner of an election. People are just voting against someone else. So he benefited from a lot of people who were voting against Tom Mulcair, a lot of NDP voters who didn't want a balanced budget, who wanted spending after austerity under Harper, and you had a lot of people that just were getting tired of the various scandals under the Harper government and infighting under the Harper government that went to Trudeau. So here you have them crafting this kind of budget to further add to this spin that Trudeau's had that he's a feminist. This is what they're really trying to do. We got to really dive down and look at how this either polls, and also look at other trends of the federal Liberals. And of course, I don't think anyone disagrees with the idea of pay equity and equality in our society. That's something that has to happen. But this is really what they're doing. They're trying to pander to female voters because they think that's the route to another majority in 2019.
What are you hearing about the race for mayor in Vancouver?
Well, that's an interesting one. We've had Hector Bremner, the former BC Liberal aide to Rich Coleman and Teresa Watt, who won the by-election for the council seat last fall. He's thrown his hat in the ring. You've got Glenn Chernin, who formed his own party, the Cedar Party, in 2014, that eventually became allied with the NPA, and he has joined the NPA himself and has a slate of supporters on the NPA board. Chernin is a bit of an outsider. He's someone who has challenged authority in court against Gregor Robertson and some suspicious land deals that happened under Vision Vancouver's watch, such as the lease to the Hootsuite, which worked on the Vision Vancouver campaign, and then it got a sweetheart lease deal in a city-owned property. You had Chernin also contesting Gregor Robertson's nomination in 2013, his candidacy papers, because there was some uncertainty about where Gregor Robertson actually lived at the time. He'd been kicked out of the house by his wife. They broke up, and he eventually, we found out, had shacked up with a Chinese singer who he no longer is with. So the other challenge that Chernin made was about the property assessment for the Oak Ridge Mall property, which is slated for redevelopment. It's going to become even bigger than Metrotown in the couple of decades to come. It's going to be a huge development, and he thought, based on his expert opinion and also research, that the property was undervalued and the developer was being undertaxed, and that meant that even with the land lift, even with the approval to rezone the property, the property value should have gone up in such a manner that the taxes should have gone up in such a manner in order to contribute to Vancouverites. He contested that, wasn't successful, but he has got this reputation of challenging authority, and he wants to bring that into the mayor's office against Hector Bremner, the other NPA candidate. You've got Y. Young, the former Conservative MP for Vancouver South, who wants to take a crack at it as well. And there may be one or two others. We don't know who they are yet. It was rather surprising that Kirk LaPointe bowed out. He was the NTA candidate in 2014, lost by about 10,000 votes to Gregor Robertson, but he had a strong showing, more than 70,000 votes. And not many candidates in Vancouver electoral history have reached or exceeded the 70,000 vote mark. And with Gregor Robertson stepping aside after this term, it looked like it was a clear channel for Kirk LaPointe to basically waltz into the mayor's office. He's someone who has, he would have the support of the business community, as he's the vice president of business in Vancouver newspaper. He's someone also in the media community as someone who is very much an advocate of transparency and accountability. He's been quite involved in that battle over the years, and he had the whole blueprint, had he won the 2014 campaign, to bring into Vancouver City Hall to reform what goes on there, including hiring a civic ombudsperson and an ethics advisor, as well as making it more transparent along the lines of places in Germany which have adopted world-leading transparency measures. So his decision in January to step aside from running for the candidacy opened the door for Hector Bremner to announce his candidacy to go against Glenn Chernin, and now it looks like Y. Young is getting more serious. We're still waiting for the NPA to actually set aside its full policies and procedures for this leadership vote, which has been delayed a few times already. In the meantime, it raises questions about who really wants to lead the other side of the coin, who really wants to take over Vision Vancouver, unless Vision Vancouver itself is a spent force. That brand really is tarnished so much that they may not even be able to run a candidate for mayor in this next election. They may have to do a collaboration with other center and left-wing parties and come up with a unified candidate. And we don't know who that is yet. There's been a number of names bandied about. Some federal politicians, Don Davies is one. I wondered if Jenny Kwan might want to leave federal politics and come back to civic politics. She was, earlier in her career, a Cope city councilor and the youngest city councilor elected in Vancouver at the time. And she's with the NDP, and it doesn't look like the NDP really has much of a chance to become the next governing party in Canada in the 2019 election under Jagmeet Singh. It could be a two-horse race between Trudeau and Andrew Scheer. And does Jenny Kwan want to take a chance and be in opposition, or would she want to become the mayor? Don't know yet if she'd throw her hat in the ring. But this mayoral contest so far doesn't really have any candidates that I think are yet of a stature enough to really inspire the city and create interest. And you've got to wonder if anyone will step forward, because there's a lot of questions about the Vancouver we now have after almost 10 years of Vision Vancouver rule under Gregor Robertson. This is a city that has a lot of lawlessness. This is a city that has problems still. The downtown east side is the downtown east side. There's been some gentrification here and there, but there still are so many problems down there and so many people with problems that no one has really taken leadership to help solve. We've got problems of criminality in the housing market. We've got problems of gangsterism and the drug market. This is a tough city to govern. And does anyone really want to step out of their career and take over this? Is anyone brave enough to do it? Or has Vision Vancouver messed up everything so much that there'd be too much of a job for someone in 4 years to try to fix? This is something to keep an eye on, because if we don't have strong candidates who have strong resumes in other areas, then that might be a telltale sign that no one wants to get involved in this job, a job that used to have a lot of interest in it.
Former BC Premier Christy Clark was the guest speaker at the Ontario Real Estate Association, but the media was not allowed in. What was so top secret?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I spoke with the spokesman for the Ontario Real Estate Association, and he told me, Jimmy Hofing, and he told me that it was a mutual decision between the association, which was the conference coordinator in Toronto, and her public speaking agent, Jeff Jacobson Agency out of Vancouver, that they wanted to have a frank and open discussion for the people who paid the money to be at the event, the real estate people. So they decided that because there was a speech and because there was question and answer period, that they would just close it to the media and let the members only in there. They didn't want people to be measuring their words because the media was listening, which I found rather interesting because, well, Christy Clark, she was in the media as a talk show host, and she was later a politician, the Premier of British Columbia, and she wasn't known very much for measuring her words. Sometimes she said some things that she was later embarrassed by. So the fact that she was at this event and about a very controversial topic back home here in BC, a lot of questions about how she handled and or mishandled real estate regulation and taxation over the years. This is something that people in Ontario were interested in finding out more about. Reporters in Toronto were finding out more about, and I was hoping to find out more about. They did make one small concession, that a copy of her speaking notes, not a copy of the transcript. We don't know exactly what she said, but we know what she was planning to say. That was sent to me by the promoter at the Ontario Real Estate Association. There isn't much there that's different from what we've heard here in BC through her speeches before she became the ex-premier. She does say some things about the foreign buyers tax, which has also been copied and implemented in Ontario, but she thinks that it shouldn't apply on a blanket basis because city economies are different from rural economies. That was one of the things she said. She downplayed again foreign buyers and tried to play up the lack of supply, the millennials entering the market, the favorable interest rates to make it easier to access money to borrow, all the other factors. She didn't say too much that was of a revelation within the speaking notes, but she had a question and answer session afterwards with the CEO of the Ontario Real Estate Association, Tim Hudak, which is the same Tim Hudak was the Ontario Progressive Conservative leader for so many years, and we don't know what was said there. I'm hoping that anyone who was there may have recorded it, who can slip out a recording or put it on YouTube or whatever. It'd be nice to hear what she said, because even though she is the ex-premier, she has no power anymore. The legacy of her decisions have major ripple effects that will be felt for years to come.
Who wants to host the Winter Olympics? It's very expensive. Sochi and in Korea, the venues will basically shut down and be ghost towns. Calgary is interested, but can they afford it? And can they afford to bribe the IOC to get it?
And that's an interesting question. The Pyeongchang Olympics is supposed to cost around $13 billion. That's about twice as much as they were supposed to cost. And that'd be almost about twice as much as what we paid here to have the 2010 Olympics. The IOC is suffering from a lack of cities wanting the games. They've become too big and too costly, and the legacies have become too questionable. And also, to deal with the IOC, you've got to deal with an organization which itself has too many problems when it comes to corruption and cronyism. There's even sponsors that are distancing themselves. McDonald's quit last year as a sponsor. Coca-Cola is a sponsor that has been around. It's probably the most ubiquitous Olympic sponsor there is. And at least in the Vancouver market and other markets around North America, they weren't putting the Olympic rings on their product. I went to stores and, in fact, found Coca-Cola boxes that displayed Chinese New Year logos on them, not Olympic logos. And they didn't have to pay anyone for the Chinese New Year sponsorship rights, but they paid a lot of money for those rights. It's about $100 million a year flat rate or so to be a top Olympic sponsor worldwide. And you'd think that they would have wanted to exploit that and attach themselves to the Pyeongchang logo, attach themselves to the Five Ring logo, but they didn't. The Olympic movement, especially in recent months with the Russian doping scandal and all that brought, and also other scandals. USA Gymnastics, one of the most dominant gymnastics programs in the world, has been suffering because the athletes were suffering. Dozens and dozens and dozens of the athletes have been sexually assaulted, and there are people within USA Gymnastics that knew something, that didn't say something, and didn't do something while that was happening. So there's a lot of questions about the Olympic movement, both summer and winter, about whether cities want to be part of this anymore. And it's also such that the Olympics, because of the way the media has expanded over the years, if you want to see those athletes in 3 years between Olympics, you can see them. You can travel to see them compete. You can see them compete in alternative competitions. They're on the internet. It used to be that when the Olympics started, this was the pinnacle of achievement. There was no professional sports. This was the only place where the athletes of the world really got together and competed on a regular basis once every 4 years. Well, they're getting together on the World Cup circuits. They're getting together on alternative events. The X Games is one of them. Winter Games and Summer X Games, made for TV ESPN event. And people can see these athletes compete a lot, either live streaming or recorded on YouTube. The access to the athletes has increased. So the Olympics aren't as special as they used to be. But the Olympics have to figure out ways and means of being more inclusive for countries that don't have as big budgets, and maybe also figure out ways of changing the hosting model. Maybe rotate the games between 3 or 4 cities instead of having to find a new franchisee every 7 or 8 years, because that's just not working anymore. Calgary is right now exploring a bid. In the old regime, by now they would have signed on and actually been a bid city, but the IOC right now is so hard up for host cities that they've got a new regime where they have an exploration phase. Because the IOC wants to reel cities in, they want to hook them and reel them in. They don't want them to kick the tires and walk away and say no. What will have to happen eventually in Calgary, if citizens want, is to be a referendum, and that could be the deciding factor. So many cities have fallen out of favor and left the Olympic bid phase in recent years because of referendums, because the citizens actually said no. And that might be the ultimate test for Calgary, because you've got a mayor there, Mayor Naheed Nenshi, who is a very pragmatic mayor. He has said that he'd love to get the international attention that the Olympics would bring to Calgary, but he wouldn't want to get the bill. So where's the happy medium between those two? He's also a mayor who's had harsh words with Gary Bettman, who's tried to get sweetheart deals from the city of Calgary in order to build a new arena for the Calgary Flames. And Nenshi is a hard-nosed negotiator there too. So I think that this is a new era, and in many ways the IOC wants and needs Calgary more than Calgary wants and needs the IOC, because as much as people will bring up, the boosters will bring up Calgary in 1988 and the success they had in 1988, it's a different world. Different world geopolitically, and it's a different world from the sports standpoint, and different world from a business standpoint. This would be a multi-billion-dollar effort, and Calgary has to figure out in the next year, if not sooner, whether they want to gamble. The only thing they get in return, because this is what happens with the Olympics, is that yes, your real estate, and yes, your construction industries, and yes, your tourism industries will benefit, but not the other parts of the economy. What does happen, though, even though there are inevitable cost overruns, is that the one thing you can be assured is that for a 2-week period, your city becomes the most famous city in the world. That's essentially what host cities are buying, is that brand recognition. Now people know where Pyeongchang is. In 2010, people found out, if they didn't know already, where Vancouver was. They found out in 2002 where Salt Lake City was. And, years after that, there might be some positive spin-offs, but there is also the problem where the people in those cities have to pay the bills for years to come.
Bob, thank you so much for chatting with us.
Thank you.
My guest has been Bob Mackin, award-winning investigative reporter and publisher of TheBreaker.news, his website, TheBreaker.ca. If you have any questions for the show, you can send them to info@howstreet.com. I'm Jim Goddard. Thanks for listening.
Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. The Goddard Report is available online and mobile at TalkDigitalNetwork.com.
The Goddard Report is a production of Howe Street Media Incorporated.